Commandos took control of that vessel Thursday night because they said it contained crude oil, that it was on its way to a refinery in Syria, and that refinery in Syria was under EU sanctions. But the Iranian foreign minister today says, just a minute, Iran is not part of the EU. Iran is not any part of sanctions on Syria. So why has its vessel been impounded, if you will? What the Iranians believe is that the British and Gibraltar authorities acted at the request of the United States as the United States seeks to put greater pressure on Iran, not Syria here, that they believe that this is part of the maximum pressure that the United States is putting on Iran, and this Britain has done it at the behest of the U.S. authorities. But right now, a big diplomatic standoff. I don't know, Scotty, if you can swing the camera around a little bit, but there's a big British naval vessel patrolling here. So this is a situation that's being taken very, very, very seriously. This impounded vessel here out on the sea, on the open waters, the British taking every precaution that nothing actually happens to it. The Iranians, of course, threatening that a British vessel should be impounded in its place in the Straits of Hormuz, Robin.
Yeah, so it's certainly a standoff literally where you are at sea. And let's just talk us broadly, though. We're also seeing the Iranians essentially tout the fact that they're increasing uranium enrichment. What does that mean in the context of where you are and what we're seeing playing out?
Well, it adds, if you will, and raises the stakes of this standoff here, of course. I mean, what Iran has now done is break two of the terms of that international nuclear deal. It has today announced it is now over and above the threshold that it's allowed to enrich uranium to. It's a very low threshold, 3.67%. They say they're now at 4.5%. And they're also now stockpiling more of that low enriched uranium than they were allowed to do by that international agreement. So they've broken two terms of the deal so far, and they are saying today that they may break in 60 days another of the limits within that deal. And of course, that could bring additional economic sanctions on them. So they're facing an extremely tough situation economically because of those international sanctions. So it raises the stakes on this vessel here, the Grace 1, being held in detention. It all fuels the growing tensions with Iran and the uncertainty about what may come next, Robin.
Okay, great stuff there at sea. Thanks so much, Nick Robertson. We'll come back to you if there's any more details. Appreciate it. Thanks to you and your team there. Okay, so let's bring in Alex Marquardt now. Alex is in Washington. And hi, Alex. Certainly you're in a little bit more stable situation, Nick Robertson there out at sea. But when we heard Nick there, he was talking about instability, the raising stakes. There is certainly each day there seems to be heightened tensions. What are we hearing today? Because Mike Pompeo spoke in the last hour and he didn't mention Iran at all.
Right. We have heard repeated warnings from Washington from both President Trump as well as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Robin. But so far, nothing in response to this latest news from Washington, from Iran. Now, of course, this is Monday morning after a holiday weekend here in Washington. As you mentioned, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo speaking just a short time ago. He did not mention this news from Iran. President Trump, as you played at the top there, warning that they better be careful. But in the past, the Secretary of State has said that Iran further enriching uranium would lead to increasing isolation and sanctions. And that, Robin, appears to be the tack that Washington is going to be taking, at least for now, continuing and stepping up this maximum pressure campaign that Nick mentioned that has been really ruthlessly effective, at least economically, in Iran. Now, the Trump administration, President Trump himself, claims that regime change is not the goal. That the goal here is to make sure that Iran gets no nuclear weapons. But, of course, in the past few weeks, we have seen a significant escalation on the ground. We have seen American military assets move into the region, a strike force group from the Navy, B-52 bombers, some 1,500 more American troops moving to the region. And of course, we saw that U.S. drone shot down just under 3 weeks ago as well, which Iran says was in their airspace. The U.S. says it was in international waters. And then the fear was that could lead to some sort of military escalation. The Trump administration decided to levy sanctions against the supreme leader and other top Iranian leaders. So, Robin, for now, it does look like the U.S. is going to be using economic weapons against Iran, but of course with such high tensions, with Iran appearing to be lashing out, and with so many U.S. military assets in the region, there is always the possibility that things could escalate militarily as well.